I was very fortunate, or, well, it happened that I created a space of several months for myself to process my knowing of what was happening in my body before I actually went to confront any medical doctors and get a diagnosis.
Hmm.
And that might be a bit unusual, but I think there's valuable information in that story for others in terms of taking back their power to decide how they are going to experience their own journey. So I'll tell the story briefly. I had some heads up, I guess, of what was coming. I was on a shamanic journey in Peru several months before I found the lump in my breast. And during that time with the indigenous shamans in the Amazonian jungle, I experienced a ceremony of the ayahuasca medicine. And one of the very clear messages I received during that shamanic journey was, you are to be your own healer. And at that time, that had that was good information, but it didn't have nearly as profound effect on me as it did until later when I discovered the breast lump. Because at that moment, I had no idea what was coming, and I just said to myself, oh, I'm going to be my own healer. That's the shamanic path. How very wonderful. And then some months passed, and then I found the knot in my breast, a very tight little knot, small, but just seemed to appear overnight from one day to the next. And when I found the lump, I felt that I knew what it was. And I also knew that I wasn't ready to take that information out into my larger community. That was information that I needed to process on my own very deeply. And I'm really grateful that I did, in fact, take the time to do that. The mainstream medical model, of course, is that as soon as you find the lump, you must be in your doctor's office the next morning. And if they feel that it's a malignant lump, then you should be in surgery the next day, and that everything should happen very, very quickly. And there certainly is some sense to that model in the sense that cancer can grow very quickly. Mine, in fact, did grow very quickly, and it was growing during the time when I was having my processing. However, for me, it was very important that I gather my power, that I gather my own resources to be prepared to deal with the community around me, because I knew that my path was not the mainstream path of listening to the doctor and doing everything that he said. I knew that my path was much more self-driven, and that my path was going to take me to places unknown, looking for my own solutions. And in fact, that has been my path. But I needed a lot of gathering of my personal power in order to go stand in the doctor's office, receive the diagnosis, smile at the doctors, and then say thank you but no thank you, and turn around and walk out and look for my own solutions. That's not a very typical response or a very typical path, and I'm not advocating that for anyone else. I'm simply saying that I knew what my path was, as I think we all must know what our personal path is when we receive such a, well, I wanted to say maybe a confining piece of information, and by that I mean it seems to close off a lot of options. And so it helps if before you get the information from the doctor that yes, indeed, you have cancer and it's going to change your life very quickly and very dramatically and perhaps end your life, you know, that information appears at first glance to be very limiting. it appears to give us very few options. At least that's how I felt in moments when I was processing this information. But because I actually found my lump in November, and I didn't seek medical treatment until it was January 2nd, right after the new year. And in that one day, I had enough medical information to know that the doctors were terrified of what was growing inside of me. There was a lot of fear among them and expressed to me. And that was the most dizzying. I was anemic when I got the diagnosis, so that was dizzying. But even more dizzying was the fear of the staff and the medical practitioners around me who were delivering to me this information that they had seen play out in very traumatic ways, and I'm sure that's where their fear comes from. But for me, I recognized that fear was something that was not healing for me. I did not wish to engage that fear. And it was very important for me to be grounded in myself, to be grounded in who I am, what is my journey, and the fact that I am not going to let fear of death throw me off in a tailspin on a life path that isn't mine. And those were, that's a lot of clarity, I think, for someone to have in those moments of receiving a cancer diagnosis, because I think for most people that diagnosis is enough to kind of tune out the world and make them, put them in a tailspin to where they really can't think or do anything. And the tragic part from my perspective is that for most people, that's when they're making the decisions about what to do. Mm-hmm. In those moments, they may be making a decision to allow the doctor to remove a part of their body the very next day. And they've had no chance to visit the implications of the long-term implications of living with the after effects of that surgery, and whether or not that's preferable to them than living with the cancer. These are options that aren't made available to us by the mainstream medical community because of the way that system is set up to feed the focus of, let's do everything we can, let's give you all these drugs, let's give you all this treatment, let's do everything we can to to fight the cancer and to keep you alive. And what's, I think, more important for the person who's facing these decisions is to know, what does life mean to me? What does life mean to me? Because what they may not realize is that to be thrown overnight into a surgery and then into chemotherapy, which is going to make them, very ill, is that, do they want to live like that? Do they want to live with those situations in their life? And for me, I was blessed with knowing that I absolutely, at an intuitive level, felt that the chemotherapy and the surgery together were more than my body could handle, that my immune system would not withstand that path, and I felt that I would die very quickly. And that knowing that I would die very quickly if I had my breasts removed and took the chemotherapy, that was part of what gave me the courage to say no thank you, and to accept the diagnosis without accepting the remedy that was being offered. And I would add that at that moment, that was the only remedy that was being offered me, because the alternative treatments that I sought were out there. I had to go look for them. And part of my decision to go ahead and get the diagnosis was being able to make the changes in my life that were necessary for me to go out and seek the treatments that I wanted to receive. And that sort of required letting everybody know. And up until that point, I hadn't let anybody know. I had just kept this inside of me. And keeping it inside of me for all that time was very empowering, because it allowed me to get very clear about my choices, my path, my vision of quality of life, and to get all of that figured out before I even talked to a family member about what was going on. And that was very important in my case because my family members were not supportive of my path. And so for me to be able to tell them what I had decided was very important, as opposed to giving them an opportunity to give input because their input was not welcome from my point of view. And there may be, you know, that's not everybody's path, but it was definitely my path. And the only way I could stand strong in decisions that I made that were totally not popular with anyone in my life but me was being absolutely sure, absolutely grounded. This is my path. These are my decisions. I own this, and I own the consequences of it, and I will walk my path with a smile on my face to the best of my ability, because I'm not a victim, because nobody is forcing something on me that I don't choose, because this is all about me embracing the potential of illness as opposed to looking at it as something that's just shutting my life down. It was basically just a, oh, okay, now, you know, in a very light sense, I have cancer, so my life is going to go off on a different path of dealing with the cancer, but I'm not going to stop living. I'm not going to stop being me. I'm not going to stop embracing what's important to me in life with the attitude that either I'll find a cure or I won't. But either way, by taking this path, I feel I'll have peace in my heart, such that when actually several years later I did lay down to die at one point, obviously it didn't happen, but I was able to lay down to die with incredible peace in my heart. I was able to look at everyone around me and to say, it's okay. I have no regrets. I've climbed so many mountains. I've kayaked so many rivers. I have met so many human beings. I have traveled so far and so deep. And I have really loved my life. And I was able to comfort others in saying, hey, you think my life is being cut short. And I don't look at it that way at all. Because for me, living is about quality of the experience that I'm having, and not about any number of years of experience that I'm having. And I knew that the quality of my entire life, that I had embraced it fully, that I had said yes, yes, and yes again to so many things that I wanted to experience. And I had allowed those things to penetrate me deeply, such that when I lay down to die, there was no sense of deficiency, no sense of being a victim of time. It was full, and it was okay for me to go. And the blessing of that was that releasing so fully was what actually allowed me to survive.